We're back out here at the Big Lake once again, and today we're talking all about summer Texas rigs and everything you need to know. And while a lot of guys are really good at using a Texas rig, some of the things the pros do will blow your mind. That's what we'll be talking about. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. Got him. You're not getting in there. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and today we're talking about one of my favorite subjects, the good old Texas rig. It's no secret that I have a special affinity for these. These are one of my absolute favorite types of presentations. Why? Because they are so absolutely versatile. They are probably the single most versatile type of presentation in all of angling, bar none. There's nothing else that I can think of that is so versatile as a Texas rig. You can work anything from finesse all the way up to a wrecking ball type of technique, such as punching mats or flipping. And today we're going to cover pretty much all of that. We are going to do a deep dive into all the little nuances about summer fishing a Texas rig, about why it can be so effective and how the pros are doing it, because they've got some different techniques. They have some different ways of using a Texas rig, ways that you probably never even thought of. And we're going to focus on things like weights and why that's so important, when to use a bobber stop, when not to use a bobber stop, and just all the different types of Texas rigs you can do with different types of soft plastic baits. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's go ahead and talk about the very first thing, and that is what type of hooks we want to use and why. Now, we've talked about it before, but basically we're going to go a little bit more in detail, and that is there are several different types of hooks that we can use for Texas rigging. You know, you've got the popular one, and that is the good old EWG. This is a great hook to use. It's very versatile and it fits most situations. You can do a little finesse with it, do a little weightless with it, you can drag deep bottom with it, and you know, like a heavy wire 4/0 like this one, or even bigger, a 5 or 6/0, you can punch mats with it, right? So this is a pretty good duo. It doesn't do anything exceptionally perfect, but for most situations it'll work just fine. Then you've got the tried and true old worm hook, right? The old offset worm hook. Now, what sets this apart from an EWG is the fact that the tip of the hook and the line tie here, they are offset from each other. That's why this is called an offset worm hook. And what that allows is, unlike the EWG, which, you know, you see the comparison right here, the point of the hook and the line tie are in perfect line with each other. Granted, that makes it really super weedless, but it can also be a problem when it comes to hookups because that line tie will actually get in the way. This will help with that. Maybe not quite as weedless, maybe have a harder time keeping your beta straight, but you'll actually do a lot better on the hookups. And lastly, one of the most commonly used hooks for Texas rigging is one of these guys right here, right? This is a flipping hook. This is a 4/0, and if you're familiar with Texas rigs, you know this is going to do most of your heavy lifting whenever it comes to flipping, pitching, punching mats, getting into the thickest slop. That's when you call for these, right? It's excellent at those types of jobs because of how stout it is. It can handle a lot of abuse. It can handle a lot of punishment. But, you know, it's also got the offset line tie. A lot of guys actually use these for all their Texas rigs, and they have great success with them. Because back in the days, back when they first started using Texas rigs, well, they didn't have the fancy EWGs, and they didn't have the fancy offset worm hooks. All they had were little straight shank hooks like this, and that's what they started using. This is obviously just an evolution of that. It's got the little grabbers here so you can keep your bait in place, but other than that, this is essentially the same hook as it was in the 1960s when they first started doing Texas rigs. So now that we've got the hooks covered, let's go to something that's at least as important as the hook, if not more. and that is the different types of weights. Now, one of the biggest differences between your regular weekend angler and your seasoned tournament pro is weight selection. And there's two reasons why it's so critical, so absolutely important to select the right weight. Now, you can get bites using the wrong weight setup. Yes, but using the correct weight at the correct time will just put your bites, your fishing game, especially with the Texas rig, to a whole new level. I cannot stress that enough. The weight is at least as important as the bait choice, and probably more important than the type of hook that you choose. And there's two very good reasons for that, and that is fall rate and bottom contact. Do we want to have a fast fall rate? Do we want a slow fall rate? What type of mood are those bass in, right? Are they looking for a reaction strike, or are you looking to create some sort of interest by dragging it by them slowly and getting them to follow it or maybe watch it or whatever? So those types of things need to be taken into consideration, and the weight is what plays the biggest part of that. See, the first one we've got is this little guy, right? This is a little 1/16 ounce lead weight, right? A tungsten weight would be a bit smaller than this, but you know, they call me lowbrow for a reason, so I use lead. Tungsten weights are good. They have their own application, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but right now we're talking about just regular weight sizes rather than what they're made of. And this is a 1/16 ounce regular old bullet weight. And I use these for shallow water, something like 2 to 4 feet at the absolute most. If I'm flipping and pitching underbrush and I've got something like a fluke tied on or something like that, well, this is going to be my go-to for that because I don't have very much water to fall through. So this is going to get the trick done. I'm not really worried about staying on the bottom. I'm not really worried about, hugging that bottom so much because I'm going to be making pretty quick presentations as it is. Now, if I'm backing further a little bit off of the bank, or if I'm fishing a little bit deeper water that's got flooded brush or whatever, then I'm going to go to something like this. This is a 1/8 ounce, and you're looking at that 4 to 6 foot range, right? This will do just fine. And this will also give you a lot more casting distance. So if you're using a bait cast reel and you've got 12, 14 pound test line, fluoro, whatever, this is going to get you where you can start casting it out, bombing it out 80, 100 feet, a 1/8 ounce weight, especially on a standard reel. If you're using a BFS reel, then a 1/16 ounce weight or even weightless, you'll be able to bomb it. Now, if we're using a Senko and we're using deeper water, well, this is something that I'm going to use. I will stick to a 1/4 ounce weight. Now, why am I using a 1/4 ounce weight and something that small? Well, a Senko doesn't have any surface area, so to speak. It's very linear, so it falls through that water like a shot. There's very little drag. Now, if I have something, say, like a craw or a creature bait, a brush hog or something of that nature tied on, something that's got a lot of flapping appendages, then I will go up to something like this. This is a 3/8 ounce weight, and this will account for that drag. It will get that bait down to the bottom much more quickly, and whenever you're dragging it back to the boat or to the bank, it will keep that bottom contact. Now, if I'm fishing from the bank, I probably won't go much more than a 1/4 ounce weight, regardless of what it is that I'm using, whether it's a pit boss, a brush hog, a worm, or whatever, because I'm just not going to be casting out, for the most part, into 15, 20 feet of water from the bank, at least not in my lake. But if you have access to that sort of deeper water from the bank, if you're fishing an area that's got a bluff wall and you can get on top of it and make those casts, then you may want to go with a heavier weight. But for the most part, just a regular 1/4 ounce weight is what's going to get you from the bank. All right. We've kind of arrived at destination number 1 here. Over there, right there, we've got a main lake point that comes out, and it's got a little bit deep of a drop off there, and we've got the old Berkeley pit boss tied on. Not everything has to be a worm. Worms are great. Worms are amazing. Worms do the job and work well. But a lot of times, you can use something completely different. And I kind of want to I'm going to work that bottom today. Let me get I'm
kind of want to work the bottom. We're dragging it along. This is what we're doing. This is our retrieve. And I'm just kind of doing it to the side like you would, you know, just sweeping it to the side like you would a jig. That's what we're looking for. Just sweep it to the side and then reel in that slack, and then sweep it to the side, which is something we've talked about before. It's a very simple basic retrieve. Cast it out there, bomb it out there as far as you can. Make sure you've got slack when it's sitting on that ground, on that bottom. Give it time to go down to the bottom, and then just sweep it. Sweep it to the side, reel in the slack. Sweep it to the side, and reel in the slack. That's all there is to it. That is the most basic Texas rig retrieve, very much like a jig retrieve. You know, it's a simple and it's effective way of presenting that bait and keeping that bottom contact. If you want, you know, you can kind of point your tip of your rod down and make sure that you're, you know, staying low to that water. And when it comes to hook sets on these, you will feel bites. You will feel the bites on those. So you reel down and you set that hook with some gusto. You put some snatch onto it. You know, like I say, like you're trying to pull the dentures out of the fish's mouth. That's what my dad used to tell me. He used to tell me that I looked like I was trying to snatch the dentures right out of the fish's mouth. And I was like, you know what? That's probably pretty accurate. I want to make sure that that hook point is driven home. Now I'm using a 7.1 to 1 gear ratio reel, and that works fine for me. And a lot of times you will hear the pros say, well, they want to be able to pick up line quickly. They want to be able to pick up line quickly and be able to catch up to that fish. And there is a reason for that. There's a reason the pros are doing it that way that they never talk about. And that is because they're usually moving along with their trolling motors, you know, clicked up pretty good as they cover water. And they usually don't mention it because I don't think they're thinking about it too much. It's just what they do. It's kind of muscle memory. But a lot of people, especially from the bank, you're not doing that. So whenever you are, you know, moving along the water and you're moving toward your bait, you're going to have a faster reel to be able to pick up that line. If you are not stationary, you know, compared to your bait's position, you are going to have a faster reel to be able to pick up that line. But if you're bank fishing, you know, if you're fishing stationary, you're going to be sitting in the same spot pretty much, you know, kind of just drifting around, or not much current, you got your power poles down, you got an anchor down, whatever. You don't really need to worry about picking up a whole bunch of line like that unless that fish hits and runs right to you, which, while it does happen, it definitely does happen, you know, it's not as much of a concern when you're sitting still, because a 7.1, you know, even a 6.4, you know, you can pick up plenty of line. You should be able to catch up to the fish if you are, you know, if you are stationary relative to the bait's position. All right, now another retrieve we can do, which is very similar to the first one, is we're going to go ahead and let it go out, and we're going to let our line sink. Just give it a few seconds. We're in deeper water here. It's going to take a few seconds for it to get down there, especially something that's got, you know, flappers and kickers on it. That's going to take a longer time for it to get to the bottom. Now, we're just going to reel the slack out, and we're going to pick up on the line, you know, like that. Reel the slack out, and just pick up and drag that bait like that. Reel the slack out, and then just pick the bait up and drag it like that. You know, this is very similar to a jig retrieve. And at the very end, if you want to, kind of give it, you know, that rod just a little bit of a shake at the tip, you know. Just bring it up like that. Give it a little shake there at the end. There was a fish right there that just jumped right there. But again, that's another way you can do it. You know, watch your line, watch it slide back into the water, and you can see when you're back on the bottom. So let's do that again. cast it out there, let it hit, let it sink, let it go all the way down, watching the line, watching the line, watching the line, watching the line, and you can see, okay, right there we're on bottom, and just pick up on it, and then just reel down and just pick up on it like that. Drag it across the bottom. Now you don't want to go past, say, noon with your pole, because then you're getting into danger zone, because if you do get a bite, you won't be able to react as quickly as you would like and get a good hook set. So I don't ever like to go past, say, 11 o'clock with my pole position. And just kind of, just like that. That's another excellent way you can retrieve your Texas rig. This is another way that we want to keep bottom contact, another way that we want to stay on the bottom. Now, one more retrieve that I like to do is kind of a crazy one. This one's more of a slack line technique. Again, we're going to let the bait fall out, we're going to let it go down, and we're going to keep an eye on it, watching the line, watching the line, watching the line. All right, and with the slack line, we're going to kind of just pop that slack out a little bit. And then with the slack in the line, we're just going to kind of give a couple little pops and pop that slack out a little bit. And this is causing it to pop on the bottom. Just kind of like that. You see, I've got a lot of slack in my line, and I'm just essentially just snatching the slack out of it. I don't want to impart a whole bunch of motion into that bait. See, a lot of slack. There's a lot of slack in my line, and I'm just tapping the slack out. That's all I'm doing. Tapping the slack out. That's all I'm doing. And then making sure my bait is falling, And that's an excellent way to trigger a reaction strike, because you'll get that little herky-jerky movement. And those bass, a lot of times they can't resist that.
Okay, now as you've seen, hook selection is important and weight selection is exceptionally important. Now we need to consider what type of gear we want to work this on. And, well, there's so many different options. Texas rig is one of those things that there's so many ways to do it. It's hard to find a wrong way, right? You can pretty much rig it on braid, you can rig them on fluoro, you can rig them on spinners, and then all the way up to, well, a flipping stick for punching. So I'm going to show you a couple of easy setups. These are my basic do-it-all setups that work so well for pretty much all types of Texas rigging, whether I'm doing a Senko stick bait or whether I'm doing a creature bait or a crawl or something like that. And again, we've got the do-it-all, right? We've got the 7-foot medium heavy. Now this has got a stiffer tip, right? This has got a fast action tip, and I want that when I'm dragging a worm. The reason being is I want to be able to feel those bites and react to them. Unlike whenever we're using a crankbait, a crankbait, we want that, that softer tip, right? So we can lean into those bites and we don't pull the bait from the fish's mouth. Well, with this is a completely different animal. We want that fast tip so we can reel down and set the hook, with force. Like my dad used to tell me when I was a kid that I would set the hook like I was trying to pull the dentures out of that fish's mouth. And that's a great analogy. I literally am trying to pull the dentures out of that fish's mouth. When it comes to Texas rigging, set the hook. Don't be afraid. Don't play. Set the hook. It's not a trebled bait. With a trebled bait, you more want to lean into it than give it a good solid rip. But with a Texas rig, don't play around. Set that hook, especially whenever you're fishing something like this. Now, just because we're fishing a Texas rig doesn't mean that we have to have the heaviest duty gear. A lot of times we actually want to go with finesse, like this guy right here. And you can see I've got a caffeine shad, right? A Strike King caffeine shad with a 1/16 ounce bullet weight. And I've also got a bobber stop. Now, I always have a bobber stop. Whether I move it up so the weight's unpegged or slide it down, I like having that bobber stop. That's one of the things that the pros do, is you will see a lot of times that, even on gear that they're not using a Texas rig on, they'll actually have a bobber stop on it, just in case. You never know, you might want to tie a Texas rig on. And these things, while you can put them on pretty easily, getting them off and storing them and putting them back on the thing is another, it's another matter entirely. So it's just easier just to go ahead and have a bobber stop on and have it ready. And that way, if you need to grab it, slide it out of the way, you can do that and your weight is free to move.
All right, now that we're kind of in a thicker hydrilla field here, as we drift north, the hydrilla is going to get thicker and thicker. I'm going to the overhand retrieve like this, and that's going to pull me up and over those plants a lot more. If I was doing the sweep to the side like that, you can see that I'm snagging plants. Now I'm coming through, but I kind of want to just glide up and over. And this is a spot right here where I'm going to pull my bobber stop up, and I'm going to let that weight kind of do its thing like that. Let that weight separate a little bit, and if that weight falls down into the hydrilla, the bait will stay up on top, a little bit more exposed. That's one of the times whenever you're looking to go, pegged or not pegged, right? It's okay to have a bobber stop on there. You can just slide it up some, but you need to be mindful that you've got it in there, because if you, wind your line in too much, you'll get that bobber stop in that top line guide, and that can be a pain in the butt, especially if you don't notice it and you go to cast and you get yourself a big old bird's nest. Not that I would know anything about that at all, not that I've ever done that.
Now, as far as Texas rigging a soft plastic bait, you've got so many options. You've got everything across all spectrums. You've got, soft plastic jerk baits. You've got stick baits. You've got crawls. You've got creature baits, right? You've got all of these baits. You can do swim baits. You can do whatever you want and rig it Texas style, and not just on an EWG or an offset hook or whatever. You can do them on a Ned rig. You can do them on a shaky head. They're made to do that. Although today we're talking about what we consider a classic traditional style of Texas rig, not like a Ned rig or shaky head, but you can still put any type of bait you want to on these. Again, we talk about versatility. Whatever you want to string up on here, chances are you can Texas rig it, right? I have Texas rigged so many different things, so many different ways, it'll make your head spin. Again, that's something that the pros do because they want to show those fish something different. They want to think outside the box, and they want to be the only guy on the lake doing that with that bait. So the first step is grab something that you didn't think you could Texas rig and Texas rig it. And next thing you know, everybody's doing it. So there you have it, the mighty Texas rig. It's no wonder why the Texas rig continues to catch more fish than all other presentations combined year in and year out. It's so versatile, whether you're fishing at finesse or all the way up to punching and flipping mats with it. That range, that complete range, no other type of bait has that sort of versatility. The only one that would come close that I can think of would be a jig. But even then, I got to give the nod to the Texas rig just a little bit. Jigs are exceptionally versatile, and you can do anything from a bitsy bug, swim jig, all the way up. But, just the mind-boggling amount of baits that you can rig Texas style and the different ways you can do it, the different ways you can fish it. It's pretty much endless, and there's new ways coming up all the time. So go ahead and give these a try. And like I said, even if you are a proficient user of the Texas rig, I guarantee you, considering some of these factors, will up your game and will put you on more fish. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.